Hi guys, so today I wanted to come on here and talk about breastfeeding and co-sleeping because I haven't really gone in depth of my breastfeeding and co-sleeping experience, but I did breastfeed my son for about a year. It was about 11 months that he kind of started to wean himself. He wasn't really nursing, he was rolling around, biting my nipples. So I figured, okay, he's not eating, it's time to stop. So I started supplementing with formula, and then once he hit 1 year, I just switched him over to soy milk unsweetened. But we're gonna talk about breastfeeding because my entire pregnancy I was like, I want to breastfeed. One, because it's cost effective, it does not cost any money to breastfeed, and I was not making a lot of money, so you know, breastfeeding kind of makes the milk free. Even that 1 month that I was supplementing with formula, I was like, holy shit, like this stuff is expensive. Like I would dread going to the store and spending $30 on formula. Like it just mind blow to me. So props to you guys that can spend that money just from the get-go, but I couldn't. So my tip for breastfeeding, if you want to breastfeed and you want to be successful, number one, do not buy formula at all, no matter what. Even before the baby comes, do not buy formula, because it would be so easy, especially in the first month of breastfeeding, where like, you know, your coochie's all torn up and it's sore, and every time they nurse you start getting contractions and your nipples start bleeding and your nipples are so painful, and every time they suck you're just like, shit, why? It would be so easy to just run to the kitchen, grab a bottle and just say screw it, here you go. But when you don't have any formula and you have a hungry, crying baby, your only option is to breastfeed. So that is my first tip. The second tip, about a couple days into well, first let me rewind. So in the hospital, my son like was not waking up to eat really. He slept a lot, and they have this whole like, oh, every 2 hours you need to feed him or whatever it is. And the nurses would come in and I'd be like, he is not waking up. I've tried everything. I've tried picking him up, you know, taking his clothes off, making him cold. He would not wake up. Later to find out, the nurses were giving me Tylenol with codeine while I was breastfeeding, which even though you have colostrum, it's not really milk. I still think that kind of plays a part. So that explains why my son was not really waking up, because he was like probably heavily medicated as much as I was, which hindsight being 2020, I would not have done that again. But once they sent me home with the pills, I stopped taking them because I was like, I just need to tough it out, because my kid cannot be not waking up to feed. So right when we got home from the hospital, I'm like 3 days sleep deprived. I'm like wanting, on the verge of tears, just wanting to cry, because like my kid, as soon as we got home, like did a whole 180, started screaming all the time, didn't want to sleep. Like he would fall asleep, I'd go to put him down, he would wake up, you know, the typical newborn stuff. So I ended up like looking up videos on how to nurse laying down, because at this point, like the sitting up, the football position, no, those did not work for me. Like the nurse would come in and like teach me, like the lactation consultant, she would teach me to do the football, hold them this way, hold their head up like this, and like I just know, like he wasn't really latching properly. Like the whole thing was just pissing me off. My back was hurting because I was like hunched over trying to like get him to nurse. So I was looking up videos on how to lay down and nurse, and that is honestly what made me able to breastfeed like as long as I did, because I just started laying down with him. Keep in mind, you guys, I'm exhausted, I'm sleep deprived, so I just started putting him in my bed with me, and I'm just on a little full-size bed. Like it's not a big bed, so once he got bigger, this obviously didn't work that well. But when he's a newborn and he's not moving around or rolling around or anything, I ended up sleeping with him. I would be exhausted at all hours of the night. I would put him in bed with me and he would just nurse, and then till he fell asleep. And I am on zero sleep, so I'm like, I'm not gonna pick this baby up for him to scream as soon as I set him down somewhere. So I just started sleeping with him. And the first night I slept with him, my mom came in and she saw that he was in bed with me and I was like passed out because I was so tired. And she's like, Ashley, like you cannot sleep with him in your bed. And I was like, Mom, I am getting no sleep. Like he's sleeping with me in my bed. And another thing is, when you're pregnant for 9 months, like you're big. So you are already like, before I got pregnant, I would flip flop, I would move around. I was a really deep sleeper. But after pregnancy, like I now just sleep on my side. Like whatever side I fall asleep on, I sleep on that side. So I wasn't worried about rolling over on him or, you know, like suffocating him or anything. And breastfeeding moms, I feel like, have like a sixth sense, like you know your baby's there, so you don't really go into a deep sleep, not to mention your kids waking up every hour to 2 hours to nurse, so you're really not going into a deep enough sleep where you would, you know, roll over. And I would put him in the middle of the bed and I would be on the edge of the bed, so like he had like a whole nother half bed to even fall off on. But I do know for the first couple months I was sleeping very lightly, like hardly any, but that was the only way I could get through like the newborn stage, because my son wanted to eat all the time, especially with cluster nursing and just everything. He was super colicky as well, so that was the only way like he would be able to be happy. Not to mention he would not take a binky for the first month at all, so I was his human pacifier, and if he didn't have my boob in his mouth, he didn't want to sleep. He just wanted the smell of me and to know that I'm close, which is understandable. And the more I looked into it, I was like, you know, putting a baby in a separate room and like sleep training them as soon as they're like born is like super foreign, like in third world countries, or even back in like caveman days, or like even like a couple hundred years ago. Like you slept with your baby, like you didn't leave your baby in another room or put them in a crib, like you had them next to you. Like most people didn't have that luxury. So I wasn't too worried about it, because obviously humans survive for as long as we have, so cribs are kind of a newer thing, so I figured it was fine. But of course, after a couple months, like 9 months, my doctor, when I told her I was co-sleeping, like freaked out and was like, you need to be very careful, blah 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 blah. And I didn't get the DocuTalk. I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't get the DocuTalk. I didn't get all these things that if you are co-sleeping and you do have the funds or the means to do that, then I would do that. I didn't, and just putting the baby in bed with me seemed to work for the both of us. I would also put a blanket down, like a nursing blanket, on my bed, obviously, because milk drips out and my boobs were engorged. So the second he would start nursing, my boobs were spewing out milk on the other side, like dripping onto him. I would put a blanket down so it would absorb the milk that would spill out when he was nursing, and that just seemed to work for us. But of course, keep in mind, for these entire 8 months, like he was nursing all night long, round the clock. Yeah, like I got barely any sleep. And right around 8 to 9 months, I'm pretty sure it was our 9-month checkup, my doctor was like, okay, he should be sleeping like throughout the night. Like he should not be waking up every 2 hours to nurse. Like you are like enabling his nursing, I guess. And so after she told me that, and I saw that other people's babies were sleeping like through the night, I was like, okay, like this is enough. Like he's also started rolling, and like I was worried he would fall off the bed or something. So like he was starting to move, and once he started to move, I knew it was no longer safe for him to be sleeping in bed with me, especially on a full-size bed. Like he could roll off. So I started to sleep train, and that could be a whole separate video because it was tough for like a week. Luckily, I have a pretty easy baby. The first like 9 months were hell because he was super colicky. He was pissed off all the time. He wanted to nurse all the time. I got no sleep. I could barely even sit through a restaurant without having to whip my boob out and nurse him. But I think sleeping with him did help. But once we kind of broke the sleeping habit, and he started sleeping in his own crib. He's also a really light sleeper, so he needs to be in like an isolated room. I can give you guys tips for like my sleep training because I have a lot of tips, trust me. But once we transitioned into that, and then at night time, because even though he was in his own bed, he would still wake up every 4 hours to nurse. So it was probably around end of November I started supplementing him with formula at night. So I would just make him a bottle of formula, and at first this kid would not take the formula, you guys. Like no, breast milk only, get that stuff away from me, like would not even entertain the idea. But after a while of continuously trying to give it to him and mixing it with breast milk, he started to take to it. And so I started giving him a bottle at night, and I swear to God, like the first night he slept the whole night. I was like, so this is what formula fed babies are talking about. Like this is crazy. So ever since then we started with the formula and the sleeping in his own bed. I mean, he sleeps through the night 12 hours from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. Would I go back and start supplementing him younger? Probably not. I do like the bonding time that we had co-sleeping and having my little snuggle bug right next to me at all times, and just having that, you know, connection and that bond that we had for so many months. But I do think 9-10 months is a good age to start, if you are co-sleeping, to start weaning them, because they're still young enough to adapt. But I feel like once they hit like that 1 to 1.5, like they're so used to it that then you're gonna have like a toddler sleeping in your bed, which will turn into a 4-year-old, and then turn into, I mean, my brother's 12 years old and he still sleeps in my parents' room. So I don't want that. So I'm really glad that the transition to sleeping in his own bed was awesome. But I just wanted to share this because I know when I was looking it up, there wasn't a lot of videos on co-sleeping, and that is what saved me and my breastfeeding journey. Because if it wasn't for co-sleeping, I would not be getting up every 2 hours to walk to the other room to then nurse him and like stay up. It was just a mess. So co-sleeping and side laying to nurse, you pretty much just lay on your side and you lay the baby down, and your boob's right there, so they just suck on it all night. He can latch on. Half the time I wouldn't even wake up and he would just be nursing. So yeah, that's how I managed to breastfeed as long as I did. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions, then leave them in the comments down below, and I will see you guys in my next one.